So why have Blizzard decided to scrap PvE? Well, they've actually done an interview with GameSpot. We're going to jump over to that now and take a look at this because I'm hoping this will contain additional information as to why we are currently down this path. Because I think a lot of people, and legitimately you can think like this, are like, what's been going on for the last 3.5 years or even 4 years? Right? What's been going on? The reason for Overwatch 1 not having content towards the end of its lifespan was very much, hey, PvE's coming around the corner. And then we get, well, no, actually, PvE is going to come a bit later, but we're going to give you PvP now. And then we get the announcement of the PvE changes from today, where essentially we're just looking at we're basically going back to the archives PvE system from Overwatch 1. So what the hell has gone on? That is the question. So let's get stuck into this, and let's just see what is said. So you guys can't see the full title here, but basically it says, Overwatch 2 PvE Hero Mode is being scrapped. Blizzard explains what happened and why. Game director Aaron Keller and executive producer Jared Nuss discuss why the eagerly anticipated mode will no longer be released and the future of Overwatch 2. And this is written by Tamoor Hussain from GameSpot. So, Overwatch is a game that rose from the ashes of Titan, an ambitious MMO that Blizzard pulled the plug on. In the wake of this decision, developers at the studio reworked ideas they had for Titan into what would become Overwatch, a hero-based multiplayer shooter that was critically acclaimed and hugely successful. Blizzard's Team 4 is no stranger to picking up the pieces of a shattered project, but this process has been kept behind closed doors. The Blizzard way was to keep games out of public view until they were ready to be seen and then release them only when they were close to the ideal vision as they could possibly be. That isn't the way anymore, not for Overwatch 2. Fair enough. When the sequel to Overwatch 2 was announced at BlizzCon 2019, where the game was also playable, it was with the promise of PvE hero component, or of a PvE hero component, that would allow players to gather their squads and play through a narrative-driven multiplayer experience. On top of that, each of the heroes that they'd come to know and love would be reworked for PvE and given progression systems that would allow players to unlock new talents. It was an ambitious new mode that in many ways was used to justify the 2 at the end of the title. And I think that's I do like that from Tamoor, what he's wrote there, because I think this is the reason a lot of us were looking at Overwatch 2 and going, yeah, but the PvE. And now we're kind of in a situation where all Overwatch 2 is the shop and the battle pass and the fact it's free to play. Because apart from that, we're just in the Overwatch model. Like they're just plugging content into Overwatch, really. So yeah, I honestly, I think a lot of us were justifying Overwatch 2 as this big PvE moment, this huge impact it would have, this moment of Overwatch is back, here's a big campaign, off you go, look at all this stuff we've been working on. Because, we've been looking at this from the outside thinking, well, there's years of development have gone into this. It must be substantial. But actually, it's nothing. It's crazed. It's absolutely crazed. Okay, let's carry on. So, we're about to get into the interview in a second. Now, however, Blizzard has confirmed that the promised PvE hero component will not be released at all. In a video, game director Aaron Keller and executive producer Jared said that the team had made the decision to take the PvE elements of Overwatch 2 in a different direction and detailed a roadmap for upcoming seasons that reveal a new hero, maps, rebalances a number of story-focused additions. According to Keller and Nuss, the decision was made for the good of the game and its live multiplayer component. Whether that proves to be true will be judged based on the execution of the upcoming seasons, detailed in its new roadmap. But regardless of this, Blizzard and Team 4 pitched an experience that won't be realised, which will no doubt confuse and frustrate players. GameSpot spoke to Keller and blah, 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 so let's take a look at what they say. Now, GameSpot say, the big talking point is the direction that you're now taking with PvE, that you basically aren't doing it. Is that the correct way to characterize it? It's not happening anymore, and you've pivoted away from it. Aaron says, I think I would characterize it slightly differently, which is we are doing part of what the team had set out to do, but not the entirety of what was discussed at BlizzCon 2019. So the real focus is on the story missions and that experience as opposed to the more open-ended hero mode and that stuff. Right, so it's fair to say that the experience that you showed during the first Overwatch 2 reveal is not going to be the only one that will be released at any point. Yeah, exactly. So we are definitely not doing the hero mode and the talents and that power progression. So I'll read that again. Yeah, exactly. So we are definitely not doing the hero mode and the talents and that power progression system. When did you realize that you weren't going to be able to execute in this way, and what was it that led to that realization? So apologies if I scroll off the screen sometimes, guys. It's a little bit different what I see. I'll try and make sure you guys can see. Aaron says, yeah, this was a process. The development of any game is a process. In the years following our announcement at BlizzCon 2019, we had a really large portion of our team working on the PvE side of the game. No shit. And I think players of our live running game could feel that because we eventually stopped making content for it. It's been maybe 2.5 years since that last hero that we launched, and we don't want to be back at that point where it's another 3.5 years since launching a PvP map. So we really looked hard at what we were doing with the live game in service of this much bigger thing that we were working on and hoping to release it. The interesting thing about it is it's such a difference releasing content for players that are playing your game instead of saving it all of that content up for one big release that you're going to do later. So we came to the realization that this wasn't the right way to be developing for all of Overwatch. It was about 1.5 years ago that we made the decision to really shift strategy. That's when we rapidly shifted the resources on our team to work on launching Overwatch 2, and that's what came out last October. But at the same time, what we came away with from that first experience was a new value for developing Overwatch. It was a new value for running the team, namely to always be putting out fresh, exciting, fun, new experiences for our players. As we're running up to launching Overwatch 2, we realized that we could not... Sorry, I apologize, guys. It's a bit late in the evening there, and I'm losing my mind, but let me just read that again. We couldn't save up all of that content over the course of what was looking to be at least the next several years to finish it. Hang on, no. Yeah, sorry, I missed a bit there, didn't I? As we were running up to launching Overwatch 2, we realized that we could not build that other game. We couldn't save up all of that content over the course of what was looking to be at least the next several years to finish it, and by doing that, pulling more and more resources away from the people that were all playing our game and all of the people that would be playing Overwatch 2. So we made a decision later last year that we would focus all of our efforts on the live running game and all of our PvE efforts on this new story arc that we're launching in Season 6. And then on top of that, to keep all of our PvE efforts, all of our co-op efforts invested in seasonal releases rather than that one big boxed release. Ooh. Presumably, the resources, time, and other necessities that you would have needed to make PvE were factored in when you originally came up with the plan to create this game. What has changed since then that now you're in a position where you can't do it? Jared says, I guess this is a general answer, but I think it's totally applicable here. When you make a plan originally, it's based on a general idea and direction. Then as you develop a game, it's not developing a piece of bank software or something where there's a finite set of instructions it has to have. When you get into the meat of it and you start feeling it out, it's like, okay, well, is this fun? Is this good? Is this original idea the thing that we're thinking is going to be awesome? And then you iterate on that until you find something you're really excited about. Once you're kind of in that, okay, we have a good idea of what direction this could go in. The question is, well, what does it take to get there? And so I think if you're building a game where you're taking the exact same engine, but apparently... So one of the things of Overwatch 2 was a new engine. So you're not taking the same engine, are you? Is this the same engine? I mean, one of the things that we were actually told is that Overwatch 2, the reason things like On Fire don't exist in Overwatch 2 at the moment is because the new engine, and it wasn't really built for that engine. Is that true or not? I don't know. That's a very odd thing to say. Okay, let's carry on. And so I think if you're building a game where you're taking the exact same engine, the exact same team, the exact same crew that has already shipped that same thing, and you're doing version 3 or version 4 of it, it's pretty easy to plan well in advance. Oh, I apologize. I see what you're saying. I was reading that as if like he's referencing Overwatch 2, but he's not. He's just trying to say if you were building Overwatch 2 with all the same tools. But for games like, which obviously they weren't, so I totally get that. I take back my comments. But for a game like this, it's tougher because the team was building something that is totally different than anything that they built before. These story missions are significantly different than archives or other ways that we've told stories in the game before. And so developing those, what it takes to do that, the technology required, the people required, the iteration required, is all different. So I understand that people think it's probably relatively simple. It's definitely not, and especially because what you don't want is it to just try to build the thing to get it out the door and move on. You want to build something that really resonates and that people love. So I guess my take is, just as the team learned more about what it took to make this, as it learned more about the time, the iteration, and the technology required, it just became clear that the schedule wasn't going to work. Okay. Aaron says, yeah, I think the scope of the hero missions was really, really large, and what it was going to take to finish it was going to be a pretty remarkable, massive lift. You think about making a game that is supposed to be almost its own standalone co-op experience that people are going to be able to play as a main game, which is what we thought, yeah? And not just how do you put all of the content into it to finish it, even just a small piece of it. The talent trees, 40 to 50 talents per hero, over 35 heroes. You're looking at thousands of talents to make everything just to get the game out of the door, plus all of the content and the missions you'd be playing to do that. And it is a pretty gargantuan ask for the team. And then, on top of that, you need to run that as a live game, so content has to continually come out for that side of the game. I mean, honestly, can it really be that difficult to produce all of these talents? I mean, it's odd that hero talents are being, like, framed as this thing that took so much effort, it crippled the team. Like, I mean, it's for PvE, right? So they wouldn't exactly need to be balanced, would they? You know, you just make them fun. You know, my famous Reinhardt hammer gif, I always use it on. I think it's the Earthquake that was called, because you could change his ultimate from Earth Shatter to Earthquake, and it became a big, like a circular AOE, like a 360 AOE. I think it was called Earthquake, but that just doesn't exist anymore. But like, they've built that, and they've built the thing. Like, and we all seen the stuff of Torb's turrets, didn't we, from back in BlizzCon, where Torb's turrets were like firing fire and all that stuff. It's just like, what? Good God. In reality, what we're looking at was running two separate games at the same time with a set of heroes as the piece that is shared between the two of them. Yes. But they'd already built, this is what I don't understand. They'd already built Overwatch, hadn't they? They didn't need to go to 5v5. They didn't need to make all these other changes to the game. So did they just make those changes to have like a, you know, almost for the sake of it and go, yeah, these are Overwatch 2 changes to try and make it appear different, when it could have just been kept the same, and we could have been in a world where they were plugging this PvE stuff into Overwatch 1 and we were still 6v6 and all of that. But again, I think the main issue here is they were told to go free to play. And so they had to make, well, decisions for that, didn't they? Anyway, he says, in reality, what we were looking at was running two separate games at the same time with a set of heroes as a piece that is shared between the two of them. As we started to get further and further into it, obviously our players could realise that we were pulling focus away from the live game, but it just didn't look like there was a definitive end date in sight where we'd be finally able to put that stamp on it. Or that end date was years away and it no longer felt like we could be doing that to our players, or we could be doing that to the live game that we're running. And that's when we took the moment to shift our strategy and put everything into the live game. You want to build something that really resonates and that people love. As the team learned more about what it took to make the PvE mode, as it learned more about the time, the iteration, and the technology required, it just became clear that the schedule wasn't going to work. So that's obviously Jared's quote from earlier on in the article. I think there's going to be a lot of frustration, this is from GameSpot, around how we got here, because Overwatch has always been a live game. So people are going to think, well, you knew this was a live game, yet you pitched this other Overwatch game, and then you also justified the 2 on the Overwatch title with that. So we're in a situation now where the game is what it always has been. It's evolved in some ways, but a sequel was released, and that sequel's justification hinged on PvE. Why did that happen? Aaron says, great question. We've talked a lot in the past about Overwatch 2 and how different it is from the original game. Even just being free to play and swapping to a 5v5 team format and all the new content that was developed for it. To me, that's the biggest change we're looking at here. It's not just that we have some of the same heroes in the game. It's the way that we're writing the game and how we're looking at the game going forward. I really hope that roadmap we just released is something that illustrates that to players. We have a lot coming out this year, and even if you look at Season 6, it's the biggest season we've ever launched in the history of Overwatch. We have a new support hero coming out that season. We have a new game mode. We've never released a new game mode as a seasonal update ever in Overwatch. It has 2 new maps coming out with Flashpoint. Oh, so there's 2 maps for Flashpoint. We are running a PvE event that season. We have a whole new type of PvE content that we're releasing with our single-player hero mastery missions. Overwatch Anniversary is running another event, and on top of that, all of that, we've got the start of our new story arc with the new story mission cinematics and other lore content, such as a lore codex. It's all packed into this one season, and this is the future of what we're trying to bring to Overwatch 2. That's what I hope players can take away from this experience, the shift in the way we want to develop for this game, and what we want to put out for players. You know, one thing I have noticed actually is there is a lot of, when they talk about Overwatch content, a lot of it is stuff, you know, it's kind of things that we've seen before. Like you're seeing the on the roadmap, there's a return of competitive. What was it called? Hang on, let me bring it up. Competitive mystery heroes returns. Well, yeah, it's like rehashed content. There is that, you know, you can really fill out a list of content and make it appear like there's loads. I mean, we can do this with the battle pass. You can go like the battle pass has got sprays, which people don't really care about. It's got voice lines. Okay, fair enough. It's got souvenirs. It's got weapon charms that look like they've been made by some horrible third party. Like the hoop doesn't even align in most of the weapon charms. It's like, and in fact, they are made by a third party. I think there's a company in Germany that makes a ton of these cosmetics for loads of games. So what the hell is going on there? Like, it's mental. Anyway. Whew. Jared then says, yeah, just to build on that a little bit, I think it's interesting thinking about this over time. Coming to the team just a little bit later and seeing the state of things and building that plan to go forward, because the original pitch was this big monolithic thing that releases. It has all of this pressure and expectations set against it. And really, the decision that we've made was not to walk away from PvE or to totally sort of abandon this side of the game. It's to move into a model that we know we can deliver on. Like, I think Jared came on board about 8 months ago. I think he was like he came on board when Overwatch 2 launched. And so obviously he's come on board. I think he came from Riot Games. He's come to Blizzard, which probably does sound odd, but he's now a vice president of Blizzard, so it's probably a substantial pay increase for that. And whatever the hell goes along with that, probably a ton of stocks and shares and whatever the hell these executives get. And his first thing was like, right, okay, forget PvE. We're going to just really play into the live thing, which I think does kind of give us a bit of a timeline there, saying maybe this decision was made 8 months ago and things started to move pretty quick. We know that if we get into the seasonal cadence, we can release things during seasons in a way that we can plan for effectively and that we think is going to be really exciting to players. That, more to the point, gives us time to adapt to the next thing for players before you need to release it. And I think moving away from that idea of this one big singular PvE release moment into no, we're going to do PvE stuff all the time. We have all these plans. Season 6 has 3 different flavors of that. And we have a bunch of other versions of that coming up and seasons after that. For me, that's a really important thing here. We want to acknowledge that it's not the thing that people were expecting, but also we have high confidence that we can deliver in the way that we're shifting now, which for us is really exciting. You can never ask anyone to take your word for it, so I hope that once we start releasing stuff in Season 6, players can see it and believe it too. Yeah, I mean, we can. So here's the thing, right? The Season 6 stuff can come out. The story mission could just be a 20-minute one-shot, and then that's it, and it's the end of it, and players forget about it. It could be more. I hope it's more. I hope there's more to it. I hope there's more than one mission. There's multiple missions, and there's loads of cool cinematics, and there's little stuff like that. I really do. But, like, again, the proof's in the pudding, right? I mean, we'll wait and see on that, because they can say all they like. You know, you can, like I said, you can make things sound more substantial than they actually are quite easily, especially when it's your job. There are a lot of live first-person shooters out there that you always have been competing for attention, that have been competing for that. And you have, okay, there's a lot of, what am I even reading here? There's a lot of live first-person shooters out there, and you always have been competing for attention. The thing about Overwatch 2 that really was exciting for me and for a lot of fan base was PvE. It was a big swing for the team, the distinguishing factor. What's the impact of not having that, and what would you describe as the big swing for Overwatch 2 now? The shop. Anyway, Keller says, it's a great question. One of the things I've always loved about Overwatch, and I think it resonates with players, is the universe and the world that we've created. Of all of the heroes that we've created and all of the heroes and characters that inhabit it, the Overwatch universe, it's this bright, inspirational future. And I think that all of our heroes really resonate with our players, not just who their characters are, but their backstory and their lore. I think why a lot of people are so invested in Overwatch PvE or Overwatch co-op content is because we're not really able to deliver a ton of that story in our game with just the standard PvP gameplay. Yeah. So I think that for us, that's the side of PvE that we really want to continue running with, is what Season 6 is. It's the start of this big narrative where players do get to find out more about Overwatch, and they do get to find out more about what's happening in the world and what's happening with a lot of characters in the game. So we are really committed to the PvE side of the game and delivering that story. On top of that, we have multiple cinematics coming out this year to help either set up that story that will be telling in Season 6 or to further some of those characters that we're working on. And there's more to come. There are other pieces of the story, like features we're bringing to the game. Another one that we're doing for Season 6 is our lore codex, where players will be able to, if they want to, dig in a lot more into what the universe is all about. So I hope that players can see that we're still committed to PvE and that we're doing more with the story than we've ever done before. We're just doing it in a different way than we originally talked about. You know, it'd be funny if the PvE lore stuff, I mean, it's just going to be Wikipedia in the game, right? Surely. I mean, I hope, well, it'd be like the Fanpedia or whatever it's called, the website that's got all like the Overwatch lore put together on it. But obviously you would hope there's new lore. And there's probably, when you unlock this stuff, you'll probably get like rewards, won't you, achievements or something for doing it. So, you know, probably is worth doing it in the game. Then Keller then says, one of the most exciting things for players in the PvE and the characters. One of the most exciting things for players when they saw the PvE was the characters and you were pitching really interesting different ways of using their abilities that seem specific to the PvE. It felt exciting to have this new twist on heroes. Is any of that coming back, and is there going to be opportunities in these PvE modes to play these characters differently, or is it going to be largely familiar? We would love to see more of that in the game, and while that was an integral part of our hero missions, we're no longer doing those, so those won't come to the game that way. But we had put a lot of work into our hero talents, and there are a lot of really exciting things, not just with gameplay, but with the fantasy of what a hero was when we could start interacting with that hero in that way. So we would like to bring them back in the future. It's just going to take a different form than being part of a new co-op game experience. Like, it just seems mental to me. Like, if you've got like, you know, use the example again of that Reinhardt earthquake or whatever it was called. It's a different take on his ultimate. Yeah, it would be broke in PvP, but just allowing you to select that in PvE could be quite fun. I mean, it's not going to be a balance problem. Nobody cares. You've obviously built the asset for it. I use a GIF that's literally nearly 4 years old now. I think it is 4 years old, showing Reinhardt doing it. So you've built this stuff. It's crazy, man. It's like, what's going on? I mean, maybe that has to be ported into the new engine. I don't know. I don't know. It's just crazy. More broadly speaking, you've probably done a lot of work on the PvE. How much of all of that is going to make its way into the PvP or repurposed? I know people often think repurposed is bad, but at least it'd be in the game. Okay, so Aaron then says, there's a lot that went into developing PvE, and it's not just the content that we've made. Some of this is tools and technology. And so if you look at Junkenstein's Wrath of the Bride from last year, that was using all of our new mission technology that we had developed for Overwatch 2. So the PvE content that we develop in the future is going to be using all of the technology and tools we created before. It will be using new enemy ecologies that we've developed for Overwatch 2, and there are a lot of really big story mission maps that are going to be coming out with it. Okay. We've then talked, so it's not a total loss. The good news here isn't like a total loss. What they've been working on, they're still going to be able to use it. Apologies, but they're still going to be able to use it in some sort of way, which is, you know, fine. Yeah, and then we talked a lot and have a lot of plans about the different ways that we can bring some of the other content forward, whether it's talents for heroes or even some of the missions that we started developing for that release. But it's all going to be coming out seasonally and in a different form and with a different purpose than what we had before. So we would like to repurpose some of it, and then we'd also use that technology to build a bunch of new stuff for us also. Fair enough. Jared then says, yeah, I think the breadth of experience that we've been able to deliver this year are significantly different and more interesting than a lot of the live events that Overwatch 1 had. And I think a lot of that is because of the work that went into PvE and the engine revamp. So going forward, I think you should just expect to see a lot more of that and a lot more pretty wild seasonal events where we experiment with stuff. And a lot of the cool non-canonical stuff like Battle of Olympus, where we're augmenting hero abilities, things like that are what you should expect to see a lot more of in the future. Okay. PvE, whether a stated goal or not, was looking like a tool to broaden the appeal of the game. Yeah, this is what I'd argue as well. With the thinking being that people who can't or don't enjoy playing in an online competitive environment could do so single, co-op, and have this interesting, unique experience. That means the Overwatch player base diversifies and grows. What does axing PvE and reintroducing some of those ideas into the PvP framework mean for the ambition of broadening the appeal of Overwatch and getting new players in? And so Jared says, yeah, this is a really interesting one for me because I think if you are only enjoying single player or PvE only experiences, then Overwatch is going to be a little bit tough for you right now. It's not. It's just going to be, you're not going to play it. What the hell? But once we get into this sort of mindset of frequently releasing PvP and PvE content, and where every single season has something really interesting for people to play in a lot of variety, I think that we can still be a good jumping on point for people who may not love hyper sweaty PvP matches or who really just want to see some cool story content with characters that they like or whatever. You know, I think the thing is here is like, yeah, if, you know, like imagine if we're in season 14, can you still play the season 6 mission in season 14 or is it just not playable anymore? Like, there is an argument. I mean, and again, this is probably what they're thinking. Again, this is if these PvE modes are playable when they're, you know, not in their season. Like, whether there's some sort of PvE archive you can select the missions from and sort of play them in the future. Imagine come season 14, you've suddenly got 10 of these missions now in the game. Somebody jumps in then, they could play through 10, maybe 20 of these missions. That might be cool. But we still don't know if that's the case, and I don't think that is the case, because I think these are just all, you've got to get the battle pass, and you've got to play the mode, and if you don't, then, you know, tough shit. And it goes on to say, for me, it's a combination of being free to play now, which is inherently removing a pretty big barrier for a lot of people who just can't spend money to buy expensive games, combined with the fact that we're trying to diversify every single season to have a bunch of different experiences that people get to jump into. So if you're the kind of person that just wants to grind competitive, that's totally cool. If you're the kind of person that wants to come in and play some arcade, this is a cool co-op mode for this seasonal event that I can do. That's awesome. I want there to be a lot more there. Well, yeah, because like just one little mode, it just is not going to keep people's interest. You know, they're literally, you know, the grand vision in my eyes for Overwatch 2 was it's the PvE, and the PvE brings new players in, and then those players have got a different way of like literally grinding the game, leveling up their heroes, unlocking talents, doing various missions, you know, doing them on different difficulties, doing them with different modifiers, all of this stuff. But that's just not the case anymore. So you don't have that attraction to that audience anymore. You've just got, oh, by the way, here's a PvE mode. Okay, cool, I'll check it out. And then back I go to PvP, but that's not really attracting the new player. Maybe they don't need to attract new players. Maybe they're just happy with the size of player base they've got anyway. And that's why they want to just sort of service them more with views. So he says, so while I don't see us springing this huge audience of PvE-only die-hard shooter players, I do see us being a really appealing game for anyone who just loves fun shooters and likes to learn new heroes and try different stuff. So yeah, it's kind of a different approach, but I also think our goal is just to make the game as welcoming as possible for a broad group as possible. And there's the roadmap we've all seen. PvE was a big part of Overwatch 2, so people are going to think, well, those devs are going to have to get laid off or moved elsewhere. What is the impact of not doing PvE anymore going to have on the team? Jared says, as a person who spends most of his time talking about organizational issues, one of the really cool things is we're able to take a bunch of people who have awesome expertise building new enemy types, big PvE missions, and big PvE worlds, and integrate them into the live game team with everybody else on the team. So instead of having this big monolithic PvE side of the team and a PvP side of the team, now we're sort of bringing everything together in a group that's focused on what is our live experience, what is the season over season experience, and how do we have people who specialize in PvP and who specialize in PvE work together to create those awesome things. So there's no adverse impact on the team. We aren't letting people go who were working on PvE. On the contrary, we were really excited to bring the team together with the rest of the folks working on events to figure it out. How do you use your unique superpower to create an awesome thing for a season? So we're working on these roadmaps. Now they're longer and longer, and all these people are involved. I actually think it's super exciting, just from a development and how do you have the team structure perspective. And I think there's a lot more we could do with everyone's powers combined than we could do before. Blizzard are not going to be firing people from the team because they are finding it difficult to retain people on the team. So they ain't going to fire anyone. You know what I mean? That's staying out of it. Blizzard has always been a studio that puts out high-quality games, and if a game isn't going to make it, we just never see it. That's always kind of been their way. This is a very rare look at the process where you tried something and then you realize you failed. How do you think that reflects on you as a team, as a company, and as a studio? So Jared says, every team at Blizzard is a little bit different, and Team 4 is unique in a lot of ways. One of the ways that I think the team is unique in the direction we're heading is just this push to be much more open, much more honest about how we're developing, and much more sort of transparent in what's working and what's working and what's not, I guess. Since I've joined, it's been a big push, and Aaron is writing blogs every 2 weeks, which are good, how the game is going and what's changing. We have a lot of people from the team out on social talking about the details of their stuff when people complain about matchmaking issues. Morgan is right there answering questions on Twitter. I think and I hope that it signals a shift in the team and the mentality of our part of the company that is really just about building this experience alongside players, as opposed to building it on our own and then handing it over to players. So what I really want to see is just that sort of co-development model, for lack of a better way to put it, grow and grow over time. This is not the kind of thing where we can just give you the tablet that is there. Please play this incredible thing and enjoy it. We want every single season to be something that is built on all of the learnings from previous seasons and all of the feedback that we got from players before. So my hope is that it signals a really healthy shift in the way that we develop and release the game. And then Aaron finishes off with, and there's a reason why we are being more transparent here. We want to be able to give players more context into our development process, and we want people to have more context around why we have made this decision. It was a painful decision for the team to make. It was really hard for us to go through this experience. We're all very passionate about the things that we work on, and we're all really passionate about the game. And part of that passion is to ensure that everything that we're making is right for our audience. So what I hope people can take away from the roadmap, the video we've released, and from the things like this interview is that, yes, we know it's tough when games change or when things are reduced in scope, but at the same time, the people that are playing our game right now are playing a PvP game. That actually is a pretty telling quote there. We've got a player base. We need to service them. This is something that should have happened years ago, isn't it? We have a player base and we are not servicing them because we are building PvE, which, by the way, fast forward 4 years, we're not anymore. We're now going to service that fan base that we already had. My belief is that the reason they're playing the PvP game is because they like that game and they're playing. Yes. Oh, yeah. So it's up to us, development teams, to continue to. They're not just playing it because they're forced to, are they? They obviously enjoyed it. Oh no! So it's up to us, the development team, to continue to make that game as good as it can possibly be. And that's the real story here. How do we take the resources that we have, the team that we have, that is so passionate about the game, to make what people are playing the very best version of it that it can be? That's our focus right now, and that's what I hope the takeaway from this can be. Well, it isn't though, is it? Because the takeaway from this whole situation is, the thing that's been worked on for years and years is the thing which has been holding the game back, in a lot of people's opinion, is now not a thing anymore. And so, yeah, it's a really odd situation. It's sort of, I think about like what the hopes were, the dreams were for Overwatch 2. And what we ended up with was just Overwatch 1 continuing to be updated with 5v5 in PvP and a store and a battle pass, and then a switch to a seasonal model instead of, I guess it was a seasonal model before, but it was seasonal events, wasn't it? It wasn't this 9-week it wasn't a battle pass seasonal model, which it is now. So yeah, we do get more content, and this is Overwatch 2 now. I don't know. It's really odd. It's like an odd feeling. It's like, on the one hand, it's great that the game's getting content. On the other hand, it's like you sort of feel you know what it could have been, right? So I don't know where we go from here. We'll have to wait and see what these experiences turn out to be like. As ever, guys, let me know what you think about all of this in the comments below. I've been Stylosa, and I'll catch you lovely lot on the next one. See you soon.